Hey, do you want to come over and make a pot of tea, bring your favorite crystals? We could talk about our birth charts, spirits, the latest house spells we've been doing. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm that witch next door. Why, hello there, my wonderful witchy neighbor. Welcome to That Witch podcast. I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door. If you haven't been here before, I am so glad that you are today. We have a very fun little episode here for you. This was actually a listener request, connecting with the spirit of your home, connecting with house spirits, and or connecting deeper with the spirit of your home. This is something that I would like to say I'm pretty well adept in. This has been something I've been practicing for a while. I feel very confident and consistent in my practice. And I think that I've got some helpful insight for you from a very general, customizable point of view. Now, there are so many ways of doing this, of approaching this, of conceptualizing this, depending on your background, how you were brought up, your culture, how old you are, what your family's like, how you grew up in a home, how you live in a home right now. There are so many differentiating factors here. So I'm going general because I am not by any means an expert in, I would not say, oh, I'm an expert in understanding the lore and mythologies associated with the home and the spirit of the home and working with the house spirits. There are so many, depending on, again, the culture, the practice, the group of people, the demographic, the time in history that impacts that. And so as far as like specific mythologies, specific entities, specific types of spirits, especially specific branches of types of spirits, like a certain type of house fae, for example, house fairies, specifically brownies, specifically, I am not an expert in all of those things. And I'm honestly not really an expert in any even singular one of those things. And I wouldn't necessarily even label myself an expert in general, probably with anything. But what I will say is that I do work with the spirit of my home and the spirits of my home regularly and have been for a very long time. And I can definitely share my experience and what research I've done and how that's impacted what I do and how I practice, and give you some like helpful recommendations or suggestions along the way. So I hope that this will still be really helpful for you, but this is not by any means some kind of history or sociology lesson in how different cultures practice working with the energetic spirits of their homes. If there are any specific branches or entities that you are feeling called to learning about and working with, I would start going down that research rabbit hole. There's probably something calling you there for a reason. And you can couple what you find with some of the basics and building blocks that I'm offering you here today. So I first started working with the spirit of my home before I considered myself a witch and before I was intentionally practicing witchcraft. And for a few years, and honestly maybe even longer than that without even realizing it, but I've been working with the spirit of my home intentionally and like recognizing it and respecting the energy within my space for a long time, again, before I was a practicing witch. This is because I have been open to concepts like that my entire life. Unlike many, maybe normal people, I don't know, there were things that I lost in the innocence of childhood when I got older, like everybody else. And at the same time, there were beliefs that I held onto. I didn't necessarily talk about them or share them with people, but I believed in inanimate objects having spirits or some type of energy in them or about them for a long time. Again, always, I don't remember not believing that. Believing in ghosts and spirits, another thing that is like a no-brainer for me. I'm like, yeah, of course I believe that. It doesn't mean I can 100% prove it to you. That makes sense to me. It's one of those kinds of beliefs. I'm like, I don't know. It makes more sense to me. That's how strongly I believe it. It makes more sense to me than the opposite, than them not existing. And so keep in mind that this is a very easy concept for me personally to approach. And the reason I talk about this is because it's important to know where we have spiritual blockages and in the things we have a hard time coming around to a belief in. Number one, there is a difference between genuinely not believing in something and not aligning with something and having a difficult time or being blocked in a belief. So this might seem kind of obvious, but it's actually pretty easy to get muddled and confused. But it's important to check in with yourself. Do I have a hard time believing this because it just does not align? And this is just a no for me, dog. Or is this something that I do feel called to for some reason, even though I am having a hard time believing it? The reason that this is important is because if you just don't believe in this, if this is just not your bag, that's okay. This episode might not be for you. That's no big deal at all. And if you are somebody that does feel called to this and is very fascinated and intrigued by this, but feels they might have a hard time actually practicing it, this episode might definitely be for you, my friend. So I would definitely stick around. Now, I started purposefully working with the spirit of my home, I want to say about 2 years before I discovered witchcraft in this life. Well, not discovered, embraced it, because I'd been learning about it for a long time, but not practicing it and not even studying it. I would just like kind of peep in on witchcraft. I just was like fascinated by it, and that witches existed and that pagans existed and that like this whole world existed. And I would like peek in and learn about it in an observatory way, like just like almost like a people watching way, like, wow, this is so cool. And like, also, I really want to be a part of it. And I don't know if I can. And that's when my intentional embracing of witchcraft began, was the day many years later when I was like, yeah, I am also this, and I'm going to practice this. So there was a time for a few years before that, before I embodied myself as a witch, and I could just I sensed the energy in my home since the first home I can remember. And when I became an adult and started living out on my own and having to be responsible for those different ways that you have to take care of a house, like cleaning and, and just handiwork and things like that. That was really when it started. And that's how it goes hand in hand for me now. So I really transformed the frustrations that we all naturally have when it comes to like having to do housework, right? Having to, take care of your house. And that's how I reframed it into taking care of my home, which is this entity. And what this great, big, sacred, beautiful entity gives to me is shelter, a place to recharge, a safe place to retreat, somewhere cool when it's hot, somewhere warm when it's cold, somewhere I can nourish myself and I can nourish my family, somewhere I can house and hold the greatest things and objects that I hold dear. And when you frame your home this way, it triggers that empathetic response, right? This emotional, oh, I can really start to see how important. And as soon as we trigger that, now it makes it a little bit easier to approach the house or the home, I should say. Because obviously, this doesn't need to be a literal house by any means. This is wherever you call home. This is wherever you do the things that I just said, the place that holds the things that you hold most dear, a place where you find security, a place where you rest and nourish yourself. That's what your home is. So whatever type of home that you have, whether you are living in a permanent home right now, or if you're in a temporary home, all of this still applies. And to anybody that is living in a temporary situation or dealing with any type of houselessness or homelessness, I just want you to know that first of all, my heart just goes out to you. It's so, so, so important and meaningful and necessary to our most basic needs to have home. And anytime that is fleeting or temporary or in transition or in a lack of, it's extremely, extremely difficult on the human body and the human spirit. So I'm just holding space for anyone in that situation here today. And these types of practices and techniques can also very much be practiced in any types of those situations. Wherever you are, the place that you're in, even right now at this very second, even if you're listening to this and you're not in your home, wherever you are, the place that you're in, there's an energy in the walls around you, whether you are in a building or you are in a vehicle right now, even if you're outside, if you're in an outside area, everything has energy. I mean, really, especially for those of you that are kind of beginning witchcraft, magic, energy work, start allowing yourself to be open and accepting of that concept and philosophy that every single thing has energy, its own unique type of energy. And probably the best tip I can give you, not just for this episode, but just in general energy work, you don't have to understand or be able to explain that energy and why it is the way that it is in order to accept it, in order to hold that belief and that philosophy and live by it and practice through it. And I think that as humans, the left part of our brain really naturally wants to like explain, and prove and define. And in right-brained work, like energy work like this, that's not really a necessity all the time. You don't need to necessarily understand it, big air quotes there, in order to respect it, in order to work with it, in order to see it and be aware of it. That alone is very, very helpful. So first step is breaking down and understanding the purpose that a home serves and these incredible abilities that a home provides us and why it's so important and therefore sacred. And then the next step from there is opening yourself up to the belief or allowing yourself to hold that belief and live by that philosophy. From here, there are so many places to go. So the first time I remember directly talking to the spirit of my home was when I thought I was being haunted. So story time with Danny. I don't know. I'm sure I've told this story once upon a time on the podcast, but who knows where that's, who knows when that was or how long it's been. So my now husband and I moved in together before we got married. We moved in together in 2014. No, yes, 2014. And we, like anybody in their early 20s, we were figuring so much out about ourselves as people at that time. And I didn't realize it at the time. I can realize it and see it now in hindsight. But I was living in a lot of fear and insecurity at that time, a lot. And my sensitivities to the energies around me were there. But because I was not a practicing witch, because I was not educated in anything like any of this, I was kind of like tortured by these sensitivities. And because of this insecure and this fearful state I was living in most of the time, the energies that I was picking up on were just reflecting back at me that fear and that insecurity. And so it took a really, really long time and a lot of educating myself years later in the fact that it didn't mean that the energies that I was picking up on during those times were fearful, bad, malicious, or whatever. That was actually coming from within me. And I was jumbling up my own feelings and my own experience in the energies I was sensing around me. And I bring this up because this is so fucking common. This is so insanely common. If you listen to paranormal podcasts and paranormal stories, you will find, if you pay attention time and time again, that many experiences reflect or like the most let me rephrase that the most malicious and terrifying paranormal experiences often are connected to or reflective of extremely negative circumstances that the people reporting these experiences are living in. Like it's 9 times out of 10, they're going hand in hand. This negative, scary, evil, paranormal experience is happening in tandem with or during the after effects of some horrific events or tragedies that have taken place, challenges in mental health or injury or illness, or catastrophe. Like it's very, very, very common. This is not, the reason I want you to not, I don't want you to think, oh, if I have negative thoughts, I'm going to automatically, I'm like cursing myself or I'm making the energy around me turn on myself. It's more that what's happening is that your inner experience is getting enmeshed in external experiences you're picking up on. And so the one thing you can have control over, which is not much in this world, right? There's not a lot that we're actually in control of other than our direct self. And knowing that helps you remember that you can separate experiences. So, one of the biggest things that I can advise you, and that is helpful to me, even personally, is that if I'm in a dark place, if I'm in a difficult place, I remind myself that I am more likely to filter external experiences, other external experiences around me, also in a dark and negative way. I'm more likely to do that. And it helps me depersonalize a little bit. And it helps me go, okay, things might not, that might not have been intended as darkly as I thought or as I remember. This is very, very important mindset work when we are talking about working with spirits and energies, because you have to be able to do your protection and your cleansing work, and you have to be confident in that. And one of the reasons I am very confident in my protection wards and my protection rituals and practices and my ability to call upon protective powers for myself is because I know I am confident that I can hold the boundary between what is in my world and what is outside of my world. And when I can do that, I am standing in so much more of my power than when that is muddied up and confused. Because most of the time, if that boundary is blurred and it's hard to tell what's happening in you and what's happening outside of you and how they're contributing to or feeding off of one another, this is when we feel particularly out of control, and it gets triggered into a state of control issues and trying to muscle and force the world around us, okay? So you can let yourself off the hook when you are in a dark place, or if you're just in a meh place, if you're not really in the mood, you don't have to practice magic. And your magic and your spirituality and your deities and your spirits, the house spirits, they're not punishing you and they're not going anywhere. Okay? Number one, this is so important to remember in this type of work, because we all, every single one of us, babe, go through cycles and patterns where we're really great taking care of our home and we are really not great at taking care of our home. And if we are bringing magic into that practice, it is really, really easy to all of a sudden feel this guilt and this inadequacy in the relationship with our home. My house must be mad at me. It must be punishing me. Maybe I'm haunted. Maybe there's this. So this is all stuff that I am speaking from personal experience more than once. So when I moved in with Jared, with my husband, I went through that first year battling these fears that the home that I moved into was angry that I was there and wanted me out. And this tension built and built until one night I confronted it very literally. And we had just gotten Toots at that time. She was a puppy, like a little puppy. And there was this very hilarious incident with her dog food bowl where for about a week straight, it literally looked like her dog food bowl. She would go over to take a drink of water or eat some food. And all of a sudden, if you were watching her from behind, it looked like the entire bowls and the stand that they were being held in like attacked her, like leapt up at her. And and they were those metal bowls and stand that would make this huge loud crash on the tile, and it was terrifying. And my husband was working nights at the time, so this was also adding to the fear, and really, that fear I was living in was being really extra reflected back at me during this time. Until one day I was so determined to prove to my husband that that was truly what was happening. I was like, I'm telling you this. I told you, I've been telling you for like a year, this house is pissed that I'm here. And now it's pissed that Toots is here. And it's trying to mess with us. So one night I laid down on the ground underneath her bowl and watched her go up to drink water or eat or whatever. And it turned out that the collar or the little tag on her collar was perfectly fitting in between the rungs of the little holder for the food bowls. And when she would like lift her head back, the little tag on her collar would stay stuck and it would pull the whole thing up and toward her and then go crashing everywhere. So I remember laughing and telling my husband this. And I remember still not being able to shake that feeling. And so it was probably that same night, in the middle of the night, in the pitch black, I went and sat on the couch and I didn't turn any lights on. And I talked directly to the spirit of the house. And I just spoke my intentions. And I just said like why I was there and that I was a good person to have in a house, that I was there to help take care of and love the house. And I wanted to raise a family there, all of this. And after that, I felt nothing but like a deeply, intensely growing bond between the house and I from there on out, to the point where when it was time for us to move and leave, that whole last final week there, I did like this whole series of different rituals that were a combination of closing out our time there and really closing that chapter and walking away from that house and that structure, that physical part of it, while also, remembering that whatever home we settle into, we bring that energy with us. And so when we moved here, I have an episode, it's linked for you in the show notes. I have an episode about, what different ways you can like settle into a new space, especially if you move. There's lots of great info in there. And I really kind of detail out what it was like transitioning into our home and kind of combining, if you will, the energy we were bringing with the energy that was already here. There's definitely a transition period. And whether you are moving into a new space or you're just getting started working with the spirit of the home you live in for the first time, remember that there's this like getting to know period. And don't pressure yourself to like have to feel like you just are so close and so tight and bonded with the energy of your home right away. It very likely just will feel very unfamiliar. And remember or remind yourself that you're in that getting to know, that very necessary getting to know stage. I find that the best ways I really tend to the spirit of my home in general and the spirits in my home, and I use these kind of in different ways because I do refer to like this collective overall energy of the home. It's very similar to like the universe. I say spirit, source, God, like that refers to this like culminating singular, we are all connected, all one energy. And then I also recognize and work with the individual spirits as well, which, in our analogy here, that's also like different deities, different beings, right? These different energies, and we all make up that big one source. And the same thing goes for a building or your home. Each room has its own energy and entity about it. And so, yes, there's definitely multiple spirits or energies, or you could even look at it as like multiple layers. I want you to work this type of magic in with your belief system, not the other way around. That's why I didn't want this episode to be necessarily a history lesson or giving you a bunch of ideas for how different people have, like different types of house spirits and different cultures and different house magic practices and different belief systems and stuff. I really believe that the most effective type of home magic is the type that is naturally born from you and your belief system and your philosophies, because you're the one living in that home. It is so incredibly uniquely your home. There is so much of you imprinted on it. Like, you living there, your energy and energies that you bring in are more than half of what makes the energy and spirits of your home what they are in the first place. So that's why it's not nearly as helpful to go the other way around and try to make something else and bring it in and fit it in to your home, and instead let it kind of organically be born the other way around. How do you view energy? Are these spirits, are they really personified spirits? Or is it more of like quantum, multi-dimensional layers of energy? And that's kind of how you view it. So for me personally, just as an example, I really, really resonate with the energies of the objects throughout my home. And the best way I can describe this is almost like the objects in my home are personified. And I talk to like every single inanimate object as if it's sentient. People at work laugh at me for that because I like talk to the equipment. I talk to the supplies and stuff. But I've been doing it for so long, I don't even notice that I do it. But I'll be like, oh, sorry, Matt. Sorry, ladder. Whoops, I have to put you back over here this time. I just do. I naturally talk to those things. And I do the same thing around my house. And when it's time to clean something, like let's say it's time to clean the bathroom, and that's something like not my favorite thing to do. Like, I don't really mind, especially if I have like a good podcast to listen to and I can just get lost in a good deep clean. But the type of cleaning it is not my favorite. It's gross, and I am a germy, not huge. I'm not a germaphobe, but I'm not super into the bathroom at all. I hate having to clean the bathroom. And I really, really, really care about having a clean bathroom. And so the way I've had to reframe this for myself is like, I'm taking care of the bathroom. And as gross as some of those things are, and how much I don't necessarily love having to take care of them, they all serve, once again, very important purposes for us. So do the same thing that we said with the house itself. Think about a singular room and all the objects in that room and the purpose that all of them serve. And instantly, again, it triggers that kind of empathetic response, and therefore kind of like higher elevated respect for these various objects. That is, for me, I have found that this has opened up that part of the journey of the getting to know. Like I said, like it really helps you get to know these energies and spirits, and vice versa. Many of my clients and students view or sense the spirits and energies in their home as the personified spirits that are there. There's definitely some of that here in my house too. And I do, especially now that I have felt really, really comfortable and confident in my protection workings and wardings, in my home now, I've felt really confident and comfortable communicating with those spirits. But that's even from somebody who's, relatively experienced in this stuff. I waited almost a year in my new home before I started really talking with like actual ghosts and spirits I could sense here, because I wanted to feel very, very confident in my wards and in my protection workings in my new space. If you don't feel confident in your space, that is not an ideal time and setting to be communicating with other spirits and other energies. So just like we were talking about, like when it comes to like not really being in a great space for taking care of your home, let yourself off the hook during the times that you're not really feeling in your element or on your game. And it's not a great time for working with the spirits and the energies in your home or other places. Okay. Remember that you can shut those things off and press pause or even stop for however long and whenever you need to. Now, in my home, I like to do a lot of listening. So, as I view these different objects and rooms as being these very personified beings, these sentient beings, I try to listen. I try to observe. And especially when I'm dusting or sweeping or doing laundry or doing dishes or vacuuming, whatever, whatever that is, I really try and listen. So if there is a space in the home that like collected a particular area of dust, like, whoa, you can tell I haven't been back here in a little while, one of those when you get to one of those corners of the house. Also take that as a message of areas of life that we can kind of accidentally neglect, and that's okay. Just make sure that we like shine the light there and we do the sweeping out that we need to do, and we pay the respect of tending to and caring for that place and that area that it deserves. I find that being open and in a mindset of listening is something that most new and intermediate practitioners need to be reminded of the most often. Very often people are in this like kind of spiritually demanding place where it's like, okay, I'm kind of waiting for a sign here. I'm waiting for something magical to happen. And the truth is that the magic happens, the big profound signs and things like that happen, they more often than not happen when we either least expect it or we're just in a place of observance and listening. When we're not trying to get anything out of something and we're just being in a place of, oh, I'm just kind of taking it all in. So when it comes to nurturing the relationship between you and the spirit of your home or the spirits of your home, remember our main takeaways today. Allow yourself to be open to the idea that energy is within everything. Allow yourself to be open to that philosophy. And remember that you are getting to know something and something is getting to know you. And when you treat it like a kind of a courting or a getting to know portion of a relationship, this is when the bonding happens. This is when the strengthening of the connection happens. Another big takeaway is try to view that tedious, frustrating housework that we inevitably have to do as your duty, like your responsibility in giving that object, giving that space, giving that home, that establishment, what it needs to serve you. Remember to break down and really let yourself examine and vocalize the purpose each room, each object, each building in your life serves for you. And remember that taking care of it is you doing your part so that that thing can serve its full purpose in your life. And remember that if you are being called to any type of like specific cultural practice or belief system or mythology or type of being or type of entity that has to do with house spirits or home magic, let yourself do that research. Go down that rabbit hole. Combine it with the very basic building blocks we're talking about here in this episode. And ultimately, if not the biggest takeaway I hope you get from today is your home, your unique bond with the spirit of your home should be naturally born from your unique beliefs and philosophies and ways of living, not the other way around. This was so much fun. And this was such a great episode for this time of year. The veil is thinning and thinning and thinning more and more every day. Scorpio season is hot on our tail. We are coming upon Samhain. Soon we'll be into the dark moon part of our entire year, winter, right? Our winter season here in the Northern Hemisphere. And this is a time you will likely naturally feel even more sensitive to the energies in and around your home and the other places that you inhabit or frequent very often. And this is a really, really good time for reviewing these kind of basics and these philosophies for yourself, remembering to be doing your energy hygiene basics, your grounding, your cleansing, your protecting, big time. Don't be afraid to educate yourself, right? And feel really confident before you practice something. And also, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. And if you've been learning and studying something for a while, start talking to that spirit. You give yourself credit for how much you really do actually believe in your magic and your powers and your wards and your guides. Okay? Really, this is a perfect time of year to be opening yourself up to practices like these. And as long as you are being responsible and you're being safe with your energy, this can be so powerful, so enchanting, and honestly downright fun. All right. So if you are in that witch school on the essentials plan and up, you have access to the Spirit Safety Guide, which is a really, really helpful guide for getting started in spirit communication. And that might feel like a really, really nice companion to this episode. If you're not in that witch school, and that sounds really, really cool, you'd probably love everything in the Modern Witches Survival Kit, which again comes with the essentials plan and above in that witch school. You can go to thatwitchschool.com to enroll and join us and get instant access to those tools and resources, and a really welcoming, amazing community too, by the way. So thank you for your time today. I hope that this was helpful and inspiring, and I'm excited for you. I hope that this is a magical season of connecting with the energies in your home and around you, and wishing you so much magic. I hope that you are all staying safe. Make sure that you're letting yourselves have fun. And of course, stay magical out there, my friends. If you're learning a ton from that witch podcast episodes, dude, just think about how much you can grow your witchcraft practice and astrology studies inside that witch school. That witch school is a monthly membership that arms you with resources, with guidance, community, and support for creating and living a modern magical life. You can go to thatwitchschool.com and browse our membership plans that start as low as just $7 per month. And unlike Patreon or like a Facebook group, our platform brings the best of the digital worlds together and gives you access to, number one, an absolute vault of lessons, workshops, guides, and cheat sheets in topics like astrology and shadow work, intuition strength training, dream work, tarot, daily magic, and way more. And number two, you instantly become part of a safe and welcoming community of other witches and energy workers who get what it's like living in a very anti-magical world and who are just trying to figure it out one day at a time and live their best witchy life too, just like you. So go to thatwitchschool.com today and find the enrollment plan that fits your budget and your unique needs. You'll instantly unlock your features, including a special member discount for one-on-one sessions with me, Danny, that witch next door. You can learn more and enroll at thatwitchschool.com today.